Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about Crown of Midnight. I just finished this book a couple of weeks ago. I originally read Throne of Glass, book 1, a whole year ago, and it took me a whole year to pick this one up because I was a little bit torn on it. I was like, yeah, Throne of Glass was okay, but it could have been more exciting, like for an assassin competition. It was a little bit dull, but the characters were kind of interesting, even if I thought Selena was a little bit vain. And, I kind of hummed and hawed about picking up the rest of the series. I, went on, read all of ACOTAR, actually, not all of it. I read everything except Silver Flames, still not read that one. And, ACOTAR was just okay to me. It was a little bit mid to me. But I started thinking about Throne of Glass. And even though I'd felt, that Throne of Glass was a little bit mid, it did worm its way into my brain a little. I was like, I do want to see what the characters are up to in the Glass Castle, see kind of what happens next. Looked up some reviews on Storygraph and they kind of said, you know what, the writing got better and the series started to pick up a little bit in Crown of Midnight. So I was like, okay, I'll buy it, I'll read it, and then I'll see what I think. I'll review reading the whole series. So I did. I bought it and I read it and I really liked it, and now I'm invested. I am reading the whole series. I read Assassin's Blade after Crown of Midnight and now I'm reading Heir of Fire. I'm about halfway through. So no spoilers past Heir of Fire in the comments, please. Thank you. My plan is to read Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows, have a break, read some other stuff, read the new Hunger Games, and then come back, probably do the tandem read and then Kingdom of Ash. Should I do the tandem read for Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms, or should I read them one after the other? Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments, but don't spoil it or I will be pissed. So, Crown of Midnight, we pick up in the action. Selena is the king's champion and she's been hired to assassinate some people, which is great because we didn't really see her be an assassin in Throne of Glass. We didn't really see her push her skills to the limit, apart from maybe in the final battle, which she was drugged for, so it's a bit unfair. We didn't really see the full range of her skills. So this is good. We kind of switch from her just telling us that she's a badass assassin to us starting to see for ourselves that yes, she is a badass assassin. Except that she doesn't assassinate her targets because the king is evil and because the empire is evil, and she doesn't really, get behind that. So instead she gives an ultimatum to her targets, fakes their death, kind of passes off a corpse as their own, and lets them kind of flee and escape and cover up their life. We see her living her life in the castle, talking to Nehemia, growing a bond with Chaol, bit of awkwardness and avoidance with Dorian since they broke up, and just going about Rifthold. She's got money again because she's quite well paid as the king's champion, and just kind of living a bit of a normal life despite doing this job that she has moral misgivings about. She's tasked to kill Archer Finn, who's an attractive courtesan that she knows from back in the day, from her childhood, from living at the Assassin's Keep, and she's given a month to do it. So we see her kind of interact with him, learn about him, give him an ultimatum of, you can leave and I can cover up your death, or I can just kill you. Choice is kind of yours. You've got a month to tie up your affairs. The first half of this book kind of focuses on that, and it's a little bit slow, I guess, because we're just kind of settling into Selena and her new life, and she has this romance with Chaol. We see their bond grow into a romance over time, which is really nice. It's a nice romantic-y kind of portion of the book, and we see her friendship with Nehemia. However, this becomes fraught. Nehemia calls her out for being a coward, for not being all that she could be, for not helping the rebels, and for just being an accessory to the king, for not standing up against what she knows is wrong. And they have this big fight where she, blows up and calls her a coward. And Selena knows deep down that this is true. It kind of hits where it hurts. And then something horrible, which is alluded to in the blurb, happens. Chaol is captured by Archer Finn and the rebels, and Selena goes to rescue him. And you think, this is the moment, this is the thing that's been alluded to in the back. Maybe Chaol's going to die. I know he wasn't, because I know that Tower of Dawn is mostly from his perspective, so Thanks, internet spoilers, but yeah, I wasn't really that worried for Chaol or Celaena in this moment. But we get a super badass scene where Celaena goes super assassin mode. We already have hints from Throne of Glass that there's something magical about Celaena, even though it's still a mystery at this point. And she almost goes into that kind of zone, like she is such a competent assassin. She's just a lethal weapon. She kind of accesses this rage inside of herself and just obliterates the assassins and saves Chaol. This was great. This was the first really great piece of action that we got in this series. I don't think we got any action this good in Throne of Glass. And this is the moment where I was kind of like, oh, yeah, we're getting somewhere with this series. We then discover that this was a ruse to get Celaena away from Nehemia. Celaena runs back and finds out that Nehemia has been butchered, very brutally murdered and dismembered. Given that their last interaction was this argument in which Nehemia called her a coward, Celaena takes this very badly and it is very gutted. And it also turns out that Chaol knew that there was a threat on Nehemia's life and didn't tell her, and Celaena blames him wholeheartedly. She attacks him in this moment, she claws at his face, she nearly kills him, except that Dorian manages to stop her with magic, which we'll get to in a second. This is a great pivot for the romance section with Chaol. Completely changes their relationship. They essentially break up just as they had been at their happiest, and it forever changes their relationship. Celaena ends up pretty much wholeheartedly alone. She's lost Nehemia, she's lost Chaol, she doesn't really talk to Dorian anymore, and she's utterly alone. She's consumed by her grief and her anger. She kind of, in this moment where she attacks Chaol, there's like this monster coming out of her, it's described as it, which we don't know what it is yet. We find out kind of by the end of the book what it is about her and this anger that's coming out. But she is like down bad for the second half of this book. She's, you know, coming to terms with the idea that she is a coward and that Nehemia was right. And Nehemia's death does kind of spur her on to, you know, make a vow at her grave that she will free Elwë and she will, you know, pursue what makes her scared, which is reckoning with her identity and kind of her destiny. We have an interesting storyline with Dorian as well. Dorian starts to display some powers, some magical powers, when he is feeling strong emotions, which is weird because all of the magical beings in the land cannot display any magic since magic was kind of stopped 10 years ago. It's weird that he is able to do magic, and it's also like, well, it's a big reveal that he's magic in the first place. But what's different about his magic? Why isn't that suppressed? We don't know yet. But this gives him a really interesting arc, adds a lot of tension. His father would have him murdered if he found out, and Dorian is struggling to kind of keep it suppressed. So this is a huge problem for Dorian, and it's very interesting. As the book goes on, Celaena keeps trying to discover the source of the king's power, which Elena, the kind of dead queen that comes to her in spirit form, says that she must do. And she starts to find like some answers to the mystery, quite Harry Potter like, you know, going to the library, reading books, learning about the word marks, try to put this mystery together. But in the end we still don't have lots of answers because it's an 8-book series, so they are coming. At the end, she tries to summon this portal to the other world so that she can speak to Nehemia, because she's still seeking a lot of closure. Nehemia kind of tells her to not let the light go out. She tells her that she actually orchestrated her own death and that she's at peace with it. You know, it's not actually so much Chaol's fault. Like, she did plan for this to happen, and she planned it all to spur Celaena on to kind of follow her destiny, which is a hard pill for Celaena to swallow because she doesn't want to do that. There's this huge standoff when the portal slips into another world and there's like this monster that comes through. Chaol's there, Dorian's there, Fleetfoot gets injured, the dog. We don't want anything bad to happen to the dog, but it's okay, the dog's okay. Chaol nearly dies, Dorian gets knocked unconscious, and Celaena goes through the portal to save Chaol by defeating the monster, and as she goes through the portal she turns into a fae with fire powers. And this is a big reveal for what Celaena really is. Her and Chaol, although they don't reinstate their romance, they kind of put their differences aside a little bit after this, and he then kind of orchestrates things behind the scenes and gets her sent to Wendlin, which she doesn't want, but he thinks she'll be safe there, so he kind of does it to protect her. Meanwhile, Dorian doesn't know that she's Fae. And at the very end of the book, Celaena kills Archer Finn. She completely guts him because he's the one who orchestrated Nehemia's death. Even though he was manipulated by Nehemia in the first place, she can't really let it go, and she absolutely decimates him. And like, her anger and her violence really comes out, and something kind of cracks within her in doing that as well. She also completely tortures and butchers the assassin that killed Nehemia. And then as she goes to Wendlin, she gives Chaol some information which he puts together, and it's revealed that Celaena is actually Aelin, Ashriver, Gelithinius, the true heir to Terrasen, and actually quite a big threat and mortal enemy to the king. So, while saying that by the end of Crown of Midnight a lot of things start to make more sense, and I was much more gripped and entertained and wanting to go on with the series. There was some other really cool things that happened in this book. For example, the encounter with the Iron-Teethed Witch. I thought this was like a really cool element of world building, and we had a really good showdown between Celaena and Baba Yellowlegs and her iron teeth and nails trying to eat Celaena. Yes, I thought it was a cool aspect that witches exist in this story besides Fae and potentially some other creatures. Overall, I thought this book was a big increase in quality from the first book. There was a couple of issues that still remained that I didn't mention in my Throne of Glass video, but the king and the duke and the other kind of members of his evil kind of inner workings, I do find them quite one-dimensional, and even after this book they remain undimensional. I hope that they will expand in the future, but at the moment, from where I am halfway through Heir of Fire, they're not in Heir of Fire that much so far, but they're just kind of evil, like super evil colonizers, oppressors. I don't see any grey area with the king's character or the duke or any of those. I hope that changes, because I think this book, you know, with the different perspective shifts and the tension that adds, reminds me of Game of Thrones a little bit. However, without having any perspectives written from any of these evil characters, it's hard to see them as anything but just one-dimensionally evil. I think Game of Thrones, and I know it's a bit more advanced and a bit more adult in this series, but I think that does a better job of explaining why characters that are evil or bad are the way they are, and making them complex as well. I mean, you've got some very bad characters in Game of Thrones like Joffrey or Ramsay, but they're still complex and they make a lot more sense to me. And then you've got characters that are good that do bad things, or they're bad but they do good things, and I think that makes Game of Thrones really complex. Like Jaime Lannister, for example, he's done some really bad things and some really good things. Your opinion on him kind of shifts. So I think on the evil bad guy side, we do need some more characters like that, and I think we might get some more of those, but I'm not sure. I'm too early in Heir of Fire to say. But sticking with this book, for Throne of Glass and for Crown of Midnight, we've got none of that. Because like Dorian could have been one of those characters, and Chaol too. They're kind of, you know, they're Ardarlian. They have a stake in the throne of Adarlan in the Glass Castle. But they're like very honourable, very good guys. There's not really any loyalty to the king. Like Chaol's loyal to the king, but it's a bit confusing as to why. And Dorian has tension with his father, but like there's really no love between them. So I think those relationships with the king and with those two characters could be a lot more complex, and I hope they become more complex as things go along. I think that's all my thoughts on that one. I don't really have any other critiques. I know I just kind of unpacked the plot a little bit, but I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun, really excited to read on, and you know, it's been a while since I found a series that, you know, I've been excited to read as much. I think it's so far way more thrilling and action-packed than ACOTAR. Like, ACOTAR has action, but I feel like the action is quite flawed. Like, there's never really a big sense of threat in ACOTAR. You don't really fear for any of your main characters, which I did explain in my video about it, but I don't get that with this book. I feel like any of the main characters could die. I think some of them probably will die by the end. Obviously in Crown of Midnight, Nehemia is a key character and she dies. And that was shocking. I actually thought that it was not real when it happened, so I didn't really cry or get upset. I was just like, no, she'll be back by the end and it'll all be a big twist. But I was wrong. There was a big twist and it wasn't all as it seems. But yeah, she's dead. She's not coming back as far as I know. And that's good. I like that. I wonder how Sarah J Maas went from writing a series of this quality with this kind of depth to then ACOTAR, which lacks a lot of the depth that this seems to have so far. I can see why people always say like, oh well, we should read ACOTAR first because it's a fluffy fun kind of one, and then read into Throne of Glass and it's a bit more like, whoa, savage. So I guess I'm glad that I read them this way round. Just a bit nervous to go back from this to like Silver Flames now, because maybe I'll enjoy Silver Flames even less than I would have, or maybe I'll enjoy it more. Maybe this series will completely convert me to Sarah J Maas a bit more. We shall see. But yeah, very excited to jump in to Assassin's Blade. If you liked my video unpacking all of this, subscribe for more. Assassin's Blade will be the next one. Follow me on Instagram as well, and let me know what you thought of it in the comments. Thanks for watching. Bye!